Connected futures.
Connected futures.
Hi, I'm Stephanie McCann. I'm the editor-in-chief of Connected Futures. And today joining us is Cisco's very own Chief Digital Officer, Kevin Bandy. So
How are
Kevin,
you?
Thanks. I'm great. How are
Excellent.
you? So we've had these conversations before, but I want to keep those conversations going and really see what's top of mind and what's happening to our customers as you
Okay.
talk to them about digital. So that said, as you do talk to some of our C-level customers out there, what are you seeing collectively as some of their biggest challenges?
Without question, just hesitation around culture is a big hesitancy for a lot of executives. Ultimately, you're also seeing that it requires a fundamentally different business strategy that may be beyond their core competency. So I think you're seeing a lot of executives that are outside of the IT organization have to really learn what the technology is going to enable around their business strategy more so than they ever have before.
So we talk about culture a lot, but we don't give always that prescriptive answer as to really how do they get into that, at least that first step in changing culture?
Well, I think culture, first and foremost, is you require a business strategy of understanding where you're going, what you're fundamentally beginning to achieve. I think, honestly, a lot of people begin to say who's going to make the journey and who's not as they change, and that's the wrong question. What are you asking people to do differently if you don't fundamentally have a business strategy? And that's why, when you go back to your first question, non-IT business leaders are now having to fundamentally understand the technology first and foremost. It is a key catalyst in every bit of their business strategy. And when they're clear around that, begins to understand the core competencies that they exist internally, which creates clarity around where is their culture strong, where is it not strong. And quite honestly, I see a lot of people look at culture and they begin to put it by function, my sales culture, my IT culture, my operational culture. And that's fundamentally the wrong behavior as well, is they need to look collectively from the very top of the leadership all the way down. Do they have the culture that's willing to push to drive a transformation in this digital age, not just be incremental, but fundamentally change something?
Yeah, and you were probably traditionally meeting with technology leaders, and now you're probably meeting with all levels.
In my particular role, and I think this is a phenomenal opportunity. It's a good voice of the market, but it's also a phenomenal opportunity around the trusted value that Cisco has in the market. I talk to very few technologists. I talk to more business leaders, CEOs, COOs, CFOs, because they now are asking the question, if I do this digital transformation, what are the implications to how I run my business? Which gets back into culture. At least they're asking the question. And that's a phenomenal position to come from a Cisco, because they clearly have a trust for Cisco, but the biggest fundamentals opportunity here for everybody is to recognize that the digital transformation is going to come from their network. So they're fundamentally looking at, I have all this data, it's got to be highly secure, but it's where all my business process runs. It's where my employees go to. It's where every application goes to. It implies I must do something radically different with it. So to be in Cisco's position where they come back and say, the network is the foundation of this digital transformation and trust us to be transparent as a technology company, speaks volumes to what our people have actually been able to create with a relationship with their customers.
And you're not just saying that because we're at Cisco, but you're living this. You're making Cisco a digital organization, and you do believe that the network is that platform to make it happen.
Listen, when I came to Cisco, I always admired what Cisco was, but I think a lot of people lost sight of the strategic value of the network. They really just looked at IT and they looked at, is it connected? They started to look at, that's a legacy question. And when you start to look at many things being connected, you're talking about machine-to-machine discussion, you're talking about artificial intelligence, you're talking about person-to-machine. This is all workflow, and I think a lot of people have historically looked at it and said, wait a minute, that's exciting, those are things connecting. But the wisest companies are saying, no, that's workflow. That has a material implication upon how I manage my work, the value derived from it, and also what is the culture of my work? What will work be? And those aren't like sci-fi questions anymore. Those are legitimate questions that business leaders are looking at because they see these small companies disrupt the traditional enterprises. And there's as much entrepreneurial talent in large companies. There's more in large companies if we just empower them to take advantage of it.
That's excellent, excellent. So how far along do you see some of these other customers? How far along are they in their digital journeys?
I would say overarching, many are not that far. I think you, first and foremost, understand by industry, by region, around the globe, we're seeing very different strategies associated with digital transformations. I think one of the fallacies is people look at Google, they look at Facebook, they look at Uber, and they say, wow, those are great digital companies. They're all companies that run from the network, but they were born with automation from the network. So when you look at a big mature enterprise of any size, doesn't matter if it's a small business, doesn't matter if it's a commercial account, doesn't matter if it's an enterprise or a global multinational. If they're established, they're trying to now go back and alter how they run their business by automation, and that implies that they have to re-engineer their business process. Doesn't mean that they can't be Uber-like or Facebook-like. They just have to look at re-engineer and then automate. But every bit of that comes right back to the network.
So if you want to give some tips to C-level executives, I know we have this great slide that kind of we can walk through, but if you want to give some tips to some of the C-level executives on kind of where to take their digital journey, I think this might help if you want to walk through that.
Well, actually, I hold this up all the time, but I literally use, I'll give you a real story where Chuck Robbins and I were just recently in New York, and we met with a customer, a very large company, and it was their entire C-level leadership. And they were talking, and I said, can I ask you a question? And I said, the implications of what you're trying to do, bringing three companies together, is you fundamentally are not trying to collapse three companies, you're trying to redefine what is the outcome of those three companies. And they said, absolutely. And I said, so you need to see where we're going. And they said, absolutely, we need to see where you're going because that has an implication upon our blueprint. And I said, and that's how you'll simplify what you're trying to achieve. And they said, simplification is overwhelmingly our biggest challenge. Because, and I said, let's talk about it. And they said, we don't simplify because our people execute what they know. They do 12-month planning. They do 30-day planning, 90-day planning, and they incrementalize change. And he said, the CEO goes, we can't simplify anything. And I said, so let us talk about how we create transparency for you so that when you begin to execute your own digital transformation, you've had time to actually plan for it to simplify before you automate. And he was like, perfect.
Oh, now I get it.
Yes.
Excellent.
And so internally, the way I partner across the executive leadership team with Rebecca Jacoby's entire organization, as we redefine in line with where we're going. And that means we're simplifying all the way down to the policy and the process level stuff before we automate anything. So when you take that slide that's exposed behind you, that is a blueprint that what we're executing across our own IT, because Cisco better be the best example of a digital transformation. And that implies moving highly towards as a service. So as much as we're clearing out the obstacles around functional autonomy in towards standards by which we will be able to pivot our business every 24 months, that's allowing G and our entire IT organization to move with far more efficiency at a lower cost, becoming more of a Cisco and Cisco transformation story in this digital economy than ever before.
And this is easy to put on, to say, obviously. It's
Absolutely.
easy to say, maybe
Yeah.
not as easy to execute, but they're embracing it and
It's
companies
not
are moving
easy
forward.
to execute at all. And this is where I believe all of your questions earlier, and when I joined, I said, Cisco better be the shining example of a digital transformation. If all digital cases originate from the network, if the foundation for digital transformation is the network, we better be a shining star of how you're going to do it. That's a responsibility that I feel every day, but that's a true legitimate responsibility I think Cisco owes to the countries that run on Cisco, to the enterprises, to the cities, to the military, you name it, whoever it is. They're asking for it. Show me that forward trajectory where you're going to help me simplify and run my business, where I execute my digital transformation. Outcome focus, simplicity, agility, all the way through security. But that one word, innovation, you could argue that should probably come last because they're now going to control their own transformation by putting innovation into the network. That is very different. So Cisco's not going to just give them hardware. We're going to empower them to put business innovation into their own network strategy. That's very, very unique.
And again, you did it for us here at Cisco. It's why Chuck Robbins, our CEO, brought you in.
Well, let's give Chuck credit. He had a vision for what he knew Cisco could become and should become. I just, from an outside perspective, I've always been bullish about what Cisco is. And I think I think we'll see industry consolidation, but I think that what Cisco has been able to achieve, when you look at our footprint and the trust that customers have, we have to reassert the strategic relevance of the network, and we have to help them change. We have to help them simplify, automate, have continuous analytical insight, and to control their own continuous innovation in a highly secured capacity. That's what they're asking us for.
So if we want to go into closing, we mentioned that many of our customers aren't as far along in this journey. What tips would you give them to kind of help speed this up a little, help them kind of catch up to where we are in terms of our digitization? So
they all start from different points. And so is there one blueprint? No. The one thing that I've tasked and I wear personally is I want to be as vocal and as transparent about our digital transformation. So anytime a customer is actually here, I share a framework that I use internally. And the one thing I would tell them is culture, you have to address culture. But the fundamental mistake a lot of companies make is when they think about digitization, they jump straight towards this notion of create new offers, create new offers, create new offers. That's not a sustainable change. That's more of a Me Too, business as usual strategy.
It's a one-off.
Yeah, it is. And many times they find out that it fundamentally is a failure. And then they have to backtrack. They've already spent the money. Then they've wasted 18 to 24 months and they're starting all over again. At our core of our transformation is simplification all the way down to the business policy and the processes and all of our physical assets, meaning all of our system architectures and everything else. And the reason why we go that far to actually re-engineer is because we want to fundamentally be in a sustained, agile state to where we can constantly flex with the needs of the industry. So don't jump straight towards offers. Focus heavily on simplification. Have a clear articulated strategy around what you're trying to achieve. And the way I speak to that is, don't be incremental. Actually define the value that you're trying to establish from the customer first and then reimagine the totality of the work that would deliver it. And I find a lot of C-level people right now are trying to do that, but it pushes their creative thinking and therefore they get very incremental. And so again, I think if I can do anything, is to share Cisco's blueprint and lessons learned as openly and as broadly as possible.
And it just sounds like build that platform first, build that foundation, being the network, simplify and build up from there.
I think about I shared this. It was a long-standing friend of John's, John Chambers. The gentleman is the CEO of a major financial institution. And he was asking a very similar question. And I said, when you build a house, the first thing you do is you actually pour a very solid foundation by which you build upon. And I said, the same thing that I would encourage you to do is to look at that is your network strategy from now on. And what you're going to do is if you build it solidly, you can remodel that house over and over and over again as long as it's built on a solid foundation. And business models are changing so rapidly now that setting that solid network strategy is going to allow you to constantly pivot with the needs of the market, listen to the market in a highly secure analytical capacity. And that's exactly why all the pivot in Cisco's network strategy puts the authority around innovation back into our customers' hands versus us just being the only one innovating and telling you how to innovate.
Excellent. It's always great talking to you, Kevin. So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
All right.
For more insights, analysis, and the voice of thought leaders, go to connectedfuturesmag.com.